Friends, welcome. Thank you for joining me for another episode of our journey through the book of John. In our last episode, we saw Jesus being betrayed by Judas, and he was taken to the chief priest, to Caiaphas, and we ended off where Peter denied him for the third time, and Peter realized this as the rooster crowed, and he wept bitterly, knowing that what Jesus had prophesied over him that he would do, he was seeing come to pass. So let's continue today with Jesus being taken to be judged by Pilate. So let's begin reading from chapter 18. We are on verse 28, and we are going to read through into chapter 19 today, and we are going to finish up until verse 16. So let's begin. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was early morning. But they themselves did not go into the praetorium, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered and said to him, "If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you." Then Pilate said to them, "You take him and judge him according to your law." Therefore the Jews said to him, "It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death," that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled which he spoke, signifying by what death he would die. Then Pilate entered the praetorium again, called Jesus, and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered him, "Are you speaking for yourself about this, or did others tell you this concerning me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here." Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in him at all. But you have a custom that I should release someone to you at the Passover. Do you therefore want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" Then they all cried again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a robber. So then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put on him a purple robe. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him with their hands. Pilate then went out again and said to them, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him." Then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "You take him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." Therefore when Pilate heard that saying, he was more afraid, and went again into the praetorium and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you and power to release you?" Jesus answered, "You could have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour, and he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." But they cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he delivered him to them to be crucified. Then they took Jesus and led him away. Isn't it amazing to see how his own people did not recognize the one that they had heard about in their own scriptures from their own prophets? And yet a Roman, Pilate, knew that there was something more about this man. He knew it enough to say 3 times, "I find no fault in him." He knew it enough to become afraid in his heart, and it says that he sought to release him, but the Pharisees did not relent. They preferred to release a robber and crucify Jesus. I want us to look at the Gospel of Matthew, where it talks about the same instance here. And I just want to read a few verses. And it talks about when Jesus was with Pilate. And it says, "Therefore, when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, 'Who do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?' For he knew that they had handed him over because of envy." And then it continues to say to us, "While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, 'Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him.'" God had spoken to the wife of Pilate in her dream, and her ears were open and her eyes were open to see and hear what God was saying, and to know in her heart that Jesus was a just man. Pilate listened to the warning of his wife, knowing that this was a man of God. Pilate even prophesies the truth over him. He calls him the King of the Jews. Perhaps he didn't know what he was saying, but God was speaking through him. And yet we see that envy, jealousy, and pride, and thinking we know it all, stops us from seeing or hearing the truth. It tells us how Jesus was whipped and scourged because the whips had these lead ends that would scrape into the skin of the one that was whipped. Don't forget that Jesus was a man like you and I, and the pain that he must have felt as he was going through this torture. And it didn't stop there. It says they took a crown of thorns and twisted it and stuck it into his head. And then they threw a purple robe over the wounds on his back where he was whipped. And they mocked him, calling him, "Hail, the King of the Jews," because he was wearing a crown and he was wearing a purple robe, and purple is the color of royalty. In front of them stood the creator of the universe, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and yet they treated him as if he was so far below them. And even in his pain, Jesus showed compassion to Pilate. Jesus recognized that Pilate did not want to hand him over. Pilate did not want to be the one to make the decision about his judgment and his sentence to the cross. But Jesus knew that the cross was something that he was going to bear and he had chosen to bear. But he tells Pilate, therefore the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin. Therefore releasing Pilate from the decision that he had no choice but to make. The greatness and majesty of Jesus never ceased to amaze me, but also the blindness and the inability to recognize who he was also never ceases to amaze me. And I feel that the reason for this is because many times we make ourselves our own gods, so set on what we believe is right and unable to receive the truth that might mess with our will and our ways. And this is exactly where the fall started, even as far back as Adam. You know, when the serpent deceived them, I will read it here from Genesis 3. We see that he makes them doubt what God said. It says, now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Let's not be so full of our own opinion, of our own desire to be God over our own lives, that we shut out any truth that is knocking on our door because we do not want our life disturbed and we want to do things in our own will and our own way. Our own will and our own way are far inferior to the one who created us and knows what is best for our lives.